This is Job Frank Chakaza with the news on Zodiak. The headlines this hour. President Lazarus Chakwera engages Minister of Health on the shortage of drugs in most public hospitals. High crime rate in Mzuzu continues to hamper efforts to decongest the prison there. Government grants diplomatic status to the African Institute for Development Policy, AFIDEP. And in sports, Sulom says discussions with sponsors TNM PLC on a new sponsorship deal are almost through. Now the news in detail. President Lazarus Chakwera has engaged the Minister of Health on the shortage of drugs in most public hospitals. This was disclosed by the State House Director Sean Gampondeni during the weekly briefing. He also pointed out that the administration is also trying to find solutions to problems affecting the agriculture sector, among others. Anafe Mlamba has filed this report.
Amid concerns surrounding the health sector, which include shortage of drugs against the recommended population, State House Director of Communications Sean Gampondeni says the Ministry of Health is working to address the challenges. An investigation has been instituted on the matter. Gampondeni told journalists in Lilongwe on Monday that despite government receiving close to 1 million COVID-19 jabs from donors, government is still spending $5 United States on each dose, adding it is improper to conclude that the country has not spent a penny on the inoculation program, which is targeting 13 million citizens. Gampondeni also said the fate of the Affordable Inputs program will be known in days to come and could not disclose if a decision has yet been made on the proposal for government to buy fertilizers straight from the manufacturers. On the position of the president regarding the emerging proposal for increased legal protection for the poor and vulnerable, Gampondeni said the president accept any decision which will be made from stakeholders and the Ministry of Justice. But social commentator and good governance expert Sheriff Kaisi has faulted the Chakwera-led administration, citing the president should swiftly address the concerns.
They have noticed that other ministries are not performing well. So we are just reminding the president that, Mr. President, this is what you promised Malawians. And if you want really to live by your promise, definitely go back to your promises and give the Malawians what they expected from.
Gampondeni also told members of the press that the president is currently scrutinizing matters of national interest which were recently presented to him by the Public Affairs Committee.
High crime rate in Mzuzu continues to hamper efforts to decongest the prison there. Mzuzu prison officer in charge, Owen Levy, says the number of inmates at the prison is still on the higher side, even after over 100 inmates were released since the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. Levy made the observation at the start of an initiative by the Malawi Red Cross Society meant to reduce COVID-19 cases in the country's prisons and hospitals. Toera Kumwenda has more from Mzuzu.
Officer in charge for Mzuzu prison, Owen Levy, says currently crime rate has increased in the city, and as a result, the city's jail is also remanding many suspects. The high figures are affecting the effective prevention of COVID-19, saying the prison needs more resources to check further spread of the virus.
As such, we have seen an increase in the crime rate in our societies. And as such, despite the efforts by government to release some inmates with minor offenses, we have also seen an increase in the number of inmates who are coming back to prisons.
This was noted when Malawi Red Cross Society was donating some COVID-19 preventive materials to the prison as well as Mzuzu Central Hospital. Secretary General for Malawi Red Cross Society, Magben Kanongoza, says the organization intends on raising over 5 billion kwacha to cushion some problems institutions like prisons and hospitals are facing to contain the virus.
We came up with a plan to raise 5.4 billion Malawi kwacha. But so far, we have received 2.5 billion. It's the 2.5 billion that we are using to go around these items.
Among some materials donated to Mzuzu Prison and Mzuzu Central Hospital include hygiene kits, masks, sanitizers, blankets, as well as gloves, to mention but a few. For Zodiak in Mzuzu, I'm Toera Kumwenda.
The Mkukula Magistrate Court in Doha has adjourned to tomorrow ruling of Sidedi official's case on the application that it be stayed pending a High Court review of the constitutional translation of their arrest. Their lawyer, Oscar Taulo, also asked the court to assign another competent magistrate at the court should the presiding magistrate Cecilia Onsewa stop hearing the case following her appointment as registrar of the Industrial Relations Court. We have more with Western Guta.
News that the Chief Resident Magistrate Cecilia Onsewa has been appointed Registrar of the Industrial Relations Court moved the defense lawyer Oscar Taulo to appeal to the court to find another magistrate to replace Onsewa since the court has other competent magistrates. Taulo further applied that the court stays the matter since the accused appealed to the High Court to make a constitutional review as to whether their arrest was in concordance with the law.
According to the state, they were speculating that there is possibility that the matter would be taken to Lilongwe, Chief Resident Magistrate, so that to assign to a proper magistrate who would handle the matter. Now, when we heard that, we had to raise issues. But before we raise those issues, as you are aware that Mr. Namio has also gone to the High Court to challenge his arrest by way of judicial review. And the court has granted a leave for judicial review. Now that it has granted a leave, Mr. Namiwa is also challenging the present proceedings that are in this court, that they should not proceed. And the court has scheduled the matter to take place on 30th this month.
Magistrate Onsewa will therefore make a determination on the appeal at the Industrial Court in Lilongwe, following arguments by the state that the defense application is immature, since the High Court is yet to hear Sidedi's application on 30th of this August. On 13th August, the Nkukula Magistrate Court granted the accused bail, waiting to give direction on the unlawful assembly case, which they pleaded not guilty to. Sylvester Namiwa and the 11 others were arrested on 11th August at Parliament Building at the beginning of their vigil, meant to force the parliamentary leadership to explain to Malawians what happened for the loan authorization bill to be smuggled into the National Assembly. Reporting for Zodiac, this is Western Guta.
Just a month after Minister of Lands Kezi Nsukwa expressed dismay at the slow progress of 10 police houses construction works in Neno, workers at the site have downed tools, pushing for unpaid salaries. One of the striking workers told Zodiac Monday that the company, Marlborough Construction, has not been paying them for 2 months, hence their action. Steve Kalunga with a report.
The contractor, Marlborough Construction Company, is yet to pay them for 2 months now. They say the development has affected their lives, as this is their only source of income. However, the workers claim that some who are friends to the company's officials got paid.
We came to Neno from different areas to work on this construction site. But when it comes to payments, our bosses do not honor it and tells us that the government is yet to pay the company.
Marlborough Construction Site Supervisor William Spiri acknowledged the delay, saying that this is due to financial challenges the company is facing. Ministry of Lands spokesperson Inoki Chingoni said funds for the contractor are available and being processed. For Zodiac in Neno, this is Steve Kalungwe.
On to some sad news now. Civil rights leaders are mourning the death of Rafik Hajat, whom they describe as a patriot and passionate civil rights and governance activist who helped grow civil society in Malawi. Hajat died of a heart attack en route to South Africa. We spoke to a few civil rights activists for their reaction to the passing of Hajat last night. First, Gift Trappens, chairperson of the Human Rights Defenders Coalition.
What is extremely important is whether due process was followed.
Prominent civil rights activist Rafik Hajat has passed on. Political analyst Dr. Nandine Patel confirmed the death, saying the civil rights defender succumbed to a heart attack. Chairperson for the Human Rights Defenders Coalition, Gift Trappens, has described Hajat's death as a big blow to the country's human rights sector.
In the civil society, this is a person that we have been looking up to, a very professional person, and we mourn him as a civil society. We are saddened by his death, And for us, I think to remember his work in terms of governance issues, human rights issues.
Civil rights activist Amy Chanika has described the late Hajat as a true Malawian who stood up to the rights of this country.
I can mention a handful of Malawian of Asian origin who can stand up to the rights of this country. He without raping its economy. He was one of them. And whether people believe that it's only Christians who get in heaven or Muslims, I think when I think of people who have done things, good things for the country, I think Rafik Hajati, like the people who supported us, is getting into heaven right now.
Rafik Hajat has died aged 65 while serving as the executive director for the Institute of Policy Interaction.
That report was filed by Alinafe Mlamba. You're watching the news here on Zodiac, and we'll be back with more after this.
Wow, hi Nancy. Wow, how are you?
I'm good, and how are you?
But how have you managed to, to have this beautiful and well-stocked shop, Nancy?
My friend, these things don't come on a silver platter.
Tell me about it.
You need to invest. I had to grow my money. I grew every single penny that I made out of my monthly savings. You know what? Sometimes you don't just have to use all the money that you get. You really need to make an investment. So, yeah, this is it.
Where do I start? I get so little money and I'm thinking that, is it possible to reach this far?
My friend, it doesn't mean that you should have all the money in the world. Come on. You can save even the little money that you get each month. There are so many ways of making an investment.
Really?
Yes. This could be investing in financial assets. You can make a fixed and savings deposits with commercial banks. You can buy an insurance policy. You can invest in treasury bills. You can also invest in physical assets like commodities or property.
Make a decision today. Invest your money to accomplish your goals.
Welcome back. A look at the headlines as we continue with the news. President Lazarus Chakwera engages Minister of Health on the shortage of drugs in most public hospitals. High crime rate in Mzuzu continues to hamper efforts to decongest the prison there. Government grants diplomatic status to the African Institute for Development Policy, AFIDEP. In sports, Sulom says discussions with sponsors TNM PLC on a new sponsorship deal are almost through. Now let's move on with the news. Government has granted diplomatic status to the African Institute for Development Policy, AFIDEP. Minister of Foreign Affairs Eisenhower Mkaka, who signed an agreement on the arrangement on behalf of government, said he expects improved service delivery in areas such as research, as the organization is now having some diplomatic privileges. He explains more in this interview.
Because allowing them to operate here will mean that Malawi government will access information that is provided for free by AFIDEP, and in exchange of the information that they give us, we granted them that status to enable them, or rather, we granted them a diplomatic status to enable them freely operate in Malawi under certain privileges. Well, these are diplomatic privileges, those that are enjoyed by all the diplomats and what have you. Once information has been obtained, the same is passed on to the stakeholders to enable the stakeholders make informed decisions. So I don't think that there is a specific area that they're focusing on. They pretty much work in all areas.
On her part, AFIDEP head of Malawi office Nyovani Madise commended government for creating an enabling environment for operations of the organization.
We work a lot with the Minister of Health in identifying policies for different health problems, tuberculosis, antimicrobial resistance, sepsis. We also work, for example, with the Minister of Gender on child marriages, adolescent sexual and reproductive health. We are also working with the National Planning Commission to help Malawi to identify which are the priority projects that they can actually undertake that would actually, the benefit would actually outweigh the economic cost of putting across the projects. So that's a project called Malawi Priorities, and we've started disseminating a little by little, but there will also be a major dissemination where we can highlight specifically some of the priorities we've identified. Just to give an example, they include education of girls, but they also include keeping girls from unintended pregnancies. They include addressing maternal mortality. They also include things like the energy sector, as well as issues to do with urbanization. So all of these are essentially linked to the Malawi 2063, and therefore would help National Planning Commission to help government in identifying what needs to be done.
Press Corporation Limited has donated medical supplies to Jikwawa District Hospital to the tune of 10.5 million kwacha. The company's general manager responsible for operations, Dr. Lighton Chitambo, reminded the district officials on Monday that companies and well-wishers donate items to health facilities to promote delivery of quality services. Christopher Sunday reports.
Press Corporation Limited PCL, which is the main shareholder for Press Ken Company, has provided some laboratory medical supplies to scale up provision of quality health services to patients at Chikwawa District Hospital. PCL General Manager responsible for operations, Dr. Lighton Chitambo, says the company has spent 10.5 million kwacha to purchase the items. He has since called on authorities to avoid stealing the donated supplies. We have concentrated on other items, particularly lab items. We have 1,000 blood testing tubes, and we have also bought 50,000 EDTA. Again, that's part of the equipment that is used in the lab. And we also bought one diathermy. There's also one bed that will be donated and other items. But Chikwawa, Director of Health and Social Services, Dr. Stalin Zinkanda, has promised to use the donated materials in the best interest of the people. As you might be aware that the health system needs to run in all the 6 blocks that are there, and one of them is the issue of medical supplies and drugs and that. So as a sector, we would always make sure that we are taking good care of the equipment. It goes to who need to be supported with. Dr. Zinkanda further asked the other development partners to assist the health sector with personal protective equipment and transport resources to enable them roll out COVID-19 vaccination in rural areas. Reporting for Zodiac, this is Christopher Sunday. And now we turn to sports.
The Super League of Malawi Sulom says discussions with sponsors Team PLC, TNM PLC, on a new sponsorship deal are almost through. Its president Tia Somba Banda made the announcement during the association's annual general meeting on Mangochi on Sunday. Sam Banda reports. We apologize, we're not able to bring you that report, and that also brings us to the end of this news edition. Before we go a look at the headlines. President Lazarus Chakwera engages Minister of Health on the shortage of drugs in most public hospitals. High crime rate in Mzuzu continues to hamper efforts to decongest the prison there. Government has granted a diplomatic status to the African Institute for Development Policy, AFIDEP. And in sports, Sulom says discussions with sponsors TNM PLC on a new sponsorship deal are almost through. Visit our website, zodiacmalawi.com, for more news. My name is Job Frank Chakaza. Goodbye.